The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. This video is made for educational purposes only. This book is about how living by timeless principles can lead to personal and organizational effectiveness. It tells the story of a father who inspired millions with his teachings, showing how his life was a testament to the power of these principles. The book shares how his teachings have helped people from all walks of life change their lives for the better. Dad was more than just a dad. He was a lifeline to his family, to his kids, to his grandkids, and to so many people around the world. He had this special way of seeing people's potential and helping them believe in themselves. One time, he saved a man from drowning in a lake. That man later told everyone it was the moment he turned his life around. Dad didn't just teach the 7 habits, he lived them. He was proactive, always looking for ways to improve himself and help others. He trained leaders, even presidents, and never let his own success make him proud. He stayed humble, always giving credit to others and to God. He had a way of making people feel seen and valued, and that made a big difference in their lives. He was funny, he was kind, and he was always trying to make the most of every day. He taught us to be responsible, to be honest, and to always try our best. Even when he messed up, he owned it and made things right. He showed us that being a good person isn't about being perfect, it's about doing the right thing even when it's hard. He loved his wife, Sandra, and they had a deep, lasting relationship. He had a way of making every moment count, especially with his family. He put his kids first, even when he was busy traveling. He made sure we felt loved and heard. He taught us that life is about serving others, not just getting ahead. His legacy lives on in all of us and in everyone he touched. His words and his example continue to inspire people to live with integrity and purpose. So, here's what happened next. The dad and his wife, Sandra, were really worried about their son. He wasn't doing well in school, he wasn't making friends, and he didn't seem to have confidence. They tried everything they could think of, telling him he could do it, encouraging him, even getting angry when others laughed at him. But nothing worked. The son just kept feeling like he wasn't good enough. One day, the dad started thinking about what he was doing. He realized they were trying to change their son by acting a certain way, but they weren't looking at how they were seeing him. They were seeing him as someone who wasn't good enough, and that was making him feel that way too. It wasn't about what they were doing, it was about how they were thinking. The dad remembered something he had read about, called the Pygmalion effect. It's when people act in a way that makes someone feel more capable. But in their case, they were acting like the son wasn't capable. They were sending a message that he wasn't okay, even though they were trying to be kind. So they started to change. They stopped trying to fix him and started looking at him as a person with his own worth. They stopped comparing him to others and stopped trying to make him fit into their idea of what a good kid should be. Instead, they began to see his potential and believe in him. They gave him space to grow at his own pace. Slowly, the son started to change too. He began to believe in himself, and with that confidence, he started doing better in school, making friends, and even playing sports. He became a leader, got good grades, and started to feel like he belonged. The dad and Sandra realized that the key to helping their son wasn't about changing him, it was about changing how they saw him. And that's how they began to understand the importance of inner change and how it affects everything we do. The dad and Sandra started to see that their son wasn't just acting a certain way because of what others expected of him. He was showing who he really was, not because he wanted to impress people, but because he felt good about himself. That made them realize something important. Success isn't just about looking good or acting like you have it all together. It's about being real, being kind, and being true to who you are. They started thinking about how people often chase things like popularity or money, But those aren't the real keys to happiness. Real success comes from being a good person, from having inner strength, and from living with honesty and integrity. They began to understand that there are two kinds of success. One is about being liked or having a lot of stuff, which is easy to get but doesn't last. The other is about being a good person, which takes time, effort, and real change. They saw how people who only care about being impressive often end up failing in the long run because their hearts aren't right. The dad realized that even if you know how to talk people into doing things, if your heart isn't in the right place, people will stop trusting you. This was a big lesson for them, and it changed how they raised their kids and how they treated everyone around them. They learned that the most important thing isn't what you do, but who you are. And that's how they started to understand the power of changing the way they see the world and the people in it. So they started to think about how we see the world. We all have our own way of looking at things, right? And that way of looking shapes how we act and how we treat other people. They realized that even if you think you're being fair or honest, your own past and experiences can make you see things wrong. It's like looking through a special kind of glasses, your own glasses. And those glasses can change how you understand what's happening around you. They saw that when two people look at the same thing, they might see completely different things because of their own pasts. It's not that one person is right and the other is wrong. It's just that they're looking through different lenses. That's why when people don't agree with each other, it's not because they're being mean or wrong. It's because they're coming from different places. This idea really changed how they thought about life. They realized that if you want to make real, deep changes in your life, you have to start by changing how you see the world. That's what a paradigm shift is. It's like suddenly seeing the world in a new way, and that can change everything. And when you see things differently, you feel differently, and you act differently. One time, a man on the subway had loud kids, and the narrator got upset. But then he learned the man was grieving, and everything changed. That's a small but powerful example of how seeing things differently can change your whole heart and mind. So, the story goes on. It talks about how some people think they can be successful or happy just by using tricks or shortcuts. They believe they can get rich or get along with others without putting in the work. But the book says that's not true. That's like trying to get to Chicago using a map of Detroit. It doesn't work. The book explains that growth and change happen in steps. Just like a baby learns to roll over, sit up, crawl, and walk, people also grow in their lives. You can't skip a step. You have to go through each one. Trying to rush the process only leads to frustration and disappointment. You can't pretend to be more mature than you are. People can see through that. The author shares a story about his own daughter. He tried to make her share her toys, but she refused. He used different methods, asking, reasoning, bribing, threatening, and even taking the toys away. But he realized he was being too quick to judge. He was trying to force her to act like she was more mature than she was. He didn't take the time to understand her feelings or let her grow at her own pace. This story shows how important it is to be patient and to trust the natural process of growth. You can't force someone to change. You have to be there for them, listen, and help them develop at their own speed. Real growth comes from understanding, not from control. So, the book goes on to talk about how people often try to fix problems with quick fixes and easy solutions. They use skills and techniques that might help for a little while, like giving someone a band-aid for a cut. But the real problem, the deeper issue, is still there. The more people focus on quick fixes, the worse the real problem gets. It's like trying to patch a leaky roof with a paper towel instead of fixing the roof itself. The author shares some of his own struggles. He talks about how he feels his employees don't respect him and don't work hard. He thinks he should be able to make them behave better or find better workers. But he starts to wonder if the problem isn't really with his employees, but with how he sees them. Maybe he's treating them like machines instead of people. He also talks about how he feels overwhelmed with work, even after trying all kinds of time management methods. He's not getting the peace and happiness he wants. And then there's his marriage, which has become distant and cold. He tries counseling and other things, but nothing seems to work. He starts to question if the problem is really with his wife, or if he's missing something in how he sees marriage and love. He realizes that all these problems come from the same old way of thinking, the personality ethic. And that way of thinking is what's causing the problems in the first place. So he starts to think about a new way of looking at things, a deeper level of thinking. This new way is about character, about being true to yourself, and about looking from the inside out. It's about changing yourself first before trying to change others. So, the man starts thinking about how habits shape who we are. He realizes that what he does over and over again becomes part of his character. He remembers an old saying, sow a thought, reap an action, sow an action, reap a habit, sow a habit, reap a character, sow a character, reap a destiny. That makes sense to him. He sees how his own habits, like being impatient or not listening, have led to problems in his work, his marriage, and his life. He also thinks about how habits are like a cable. Every day, we add a strand, and once it's all tied together, it's hard to break. But he also knows from his own experience that habits can be changed. It takes work, but it's possible. He starts to think about what makes a habit. It's not just doing something over and over. It's knowing why you're doing it, knowing how to do it, and wanting to do it. He knows he doesn't always listen because he doesn't know how to listen deeply, or he doesn't want to. That's why it's not a habit. If he wants to change, he needs to work on all three parts: knowledge, skill, and desire. He also starts to think about how people grow. He talks about the maturity continuum. He moves from being dependent, where he needs others to help him, to being independent, where he can take care of himself, and finally to being interdependent, where he works with others to achieve more than he could alone. He sees that independence is important, but it's not the end of the journey. Real growth comes when we learn to work with others, not just for ourselves. He also thinks about effectiveness. He remembers the story of the goose and the golden egg. He realizes that effectiveness isn't just about getting results. It's about keeping the goose healthy so the golden eggs keep coming. That's the PC balance, production and production capability. He starts to see that all these ideas are connected. The 7 habits aren't just steps to follow. They're part of a journey, a process of becoming more effective in all areas of life. So, he thought about how people treat their stuff, like cars, computers, even their bodies. He used a lawnmower for a few years without ever cleaning it or checking it. Then it broke down, and he had to buy a new one. He realized he could have kept the old one working if he had taken care of it. That's what the PPC balance is about, keeping the goose healthy so it keeps laying golden eggs. He saw how this idea applies to money too. People often take from their savings to live better now, but that makes it harder to earn more later. If you don't keep improving your skills and staying healthy, you limit your future. You end up stuck, worried about what others think, and not really in control of your life. He also thought about relationships. When people are too focused on getting what they want from their partner or child, they forget to care about the relationship itself. That makes things cold and hard. But when you invest in the relationship, listening, understanding, being kind, you create something strong and lasting. He shared a story about his daughter. They were planning a special date, and she wanted to watch a movie he didn't like. Instead of pushing back, he said he'd do whatever she wanted. She surprised him by connecting his teaching to the idea of a Jedi Knight. They ended up learning together, and the relationship grew stronger. That wasn't about getting what he wanted, it was about building something real. He talked about how this balance works in businesses too. If a manager pushes too hard without caring for the team or equipment, everything breaks down later. And when companies treat customers like numbers instead of people, trust goes away, and business suffers. He said the PC balance is the key to being effective. It's about knowing when to go for the golden egg and when to take care of the goose. It's about long-term thinking and real connection. That's what makes someone truly effective. So, here's what happens next. The author wants you to take what you're learning and really feel it. Not just read it and forget. He says, when you're learning something new, try to notice how it feels inside. If you do this with every chapter, you'll remember more, understand better, and feel more excited to try it out. And when you share what you're learning with others, people will start to see you as someone who's growing, not just someone who's trying to change others. He talks about how change happens from the inside. No one can make you change. You have to open your own door. If you do, you'll grow in ways you never thought possible. You'll feel more confident, more like yourself, and more at peace. You won't worry so much about what others think of you. Instead, you'll care more about helping others and building real relationships. As you move to the next habits, you'll start to fix broken relationships and build new ones that are deeper and more meaningful. And the last habit, if you really live it, will help you grow in all the others. You'll become more independent, but also better at working with others. You can take care of yourself and still care for others. It's not quick or easy, but it's worth it. And when you start to change, you'll feel the difference right away. So, the book starts by talking about how important it is to be aware of yourself. It says we have this special ability to think about our own thoughts. That's called self-awareness. It's what makes us different from animals. We can look at how we feel, how we think, and even how we see ourselves. This helps us understand how we act and how others see us. But sometimes we get our ideas about ourselves from other people. That's like looking in a broken mirror. People around us tell us what we're like, but those reflections can be all over the place. They might not show the real us. Instead, they might show what others think we should be or what they think about themselves. The book gives 3 different views of how we're shaped: genetic, psychic, and environmental. These are like maps that say we're controlled by our family, our upbringing, or our surroundings. But the author says these maps don't show the full picture. We have more power than that. Then it tells the story of Viktor Frankl. He was a doctor who was in a Nazi concentration camp. He was tortured and lost everything. But even in that terrible place, he realized he had a choice. He could decide how to react to his suffering. That's the key idea. Between what happens to us and how we respond, we have freedom. This leads to the idea of proactivity. Proactive people are in charge of their own lives. They don't blame others or their situation for how they feel. They make choices based on values, not feelings. They can choose to be happy, even when things are hard. The book also talks about how we can focus on what we can control. It shows a diagram called the circle of concern and circle of influence. The circle of concern is all the things we worry about, but the circle of influence is what we can actually do something about. The idea is to focus on our circle of influence and let go of what we can't control. This part is about finding freedom in our choices and taking responsibility for our lives. It's a big shift from being controlled by outside forces to being in charge of our own emotions and actions. So, the story continues with more examples of how people can choose their response to difficult situations. It reminds us that it's not what happens to us that hurts us, but how we react. Even when we're in terrible pain, we can still choose to be strong and keep our values. This is called being proactive. It means we take control of our lives and don't let outside forces control our emotions or actions. The book shares stories of people who faced extreme suffering and still chose to act with courage. One of them was a friend named Carol, who had a serious illness. Even when she was in pain, she stayed strong, wrote messages for her kids, and inspired everyone around her. Her attitude showed that even in the worst times, we can still choose to be kind, brave, and helpful. The book also talks about how we can change our thinking. It suggests that instead of focusing on things we can't control, we should focus on what we can influence. This is called the circle of influence. By doing that, we gain more freedom and can make a real difference in our lives and the lives of others. This part of the story shows how taking initiative and being responsible can lead to big changes. It encourages us to take action, even when things are hard. It reminds us that we have the power to shape our own destiny and that our choices matter. So, the book goes on to explain how we can really take control of our lives by focusing on what we can change instead of what we can't. It talks about two circles: circle of concern and circle of influence. The circle of concern is all the things we worry about, like problems at work, family issues, or things we don't like. But the circle of influence is where we can actually do something. Proactive people spend their time and energy on the circle of influence because that's where real change happens. The book gives examples of people who chose to work on themselves instead of blaming others. Like a man who worked with a boss who was very strong but not very kind. The boss didn't listen to people, and that made the team feel unimportant. But one person decided to act differently. He didn't blame the boss or the situation. He focused on being helpful, being kind, and understanding the boss's needs. He made himself useful, and slowly, he started to influence the whole team. His circle of influence grew because he was taking control of his own actions and attitude. This shows that even in tough situations, we can make a difference by focusing on what we can change. It's not about being pushy or aggressive, it's about being smart, kind, and choosing to act. The book also talks about the difference between have and be. When we focus on what we don't have, we feel stuck. But when we focus on who we are and who we want to be, we start to make real progress. So, here's the thing. We can choose how we act, but we can't control what happens because of that action. Like if you step in front of a train, you can choose to do it, but you can't choose what happens when it hits you. The same goes for our choices in life. If we lie or cheat, we might get away with it sometimes, but our character takes a hit. Our behavior is guided by principles, and when we follow them, good things happen. When we break them, bad things happen. We are free to choose how we respond, but that choice brings its own consequences. Sometimes we make mistakes. That's okay. The important thing is to notice them right away, fix them, and learn from them. Don't let a mistake control your next moment. Acknowledge it, correct it, and move on. That's how we turn failure into success. Making and keeping promises is a big part of being proactive. When we make a promise to ourselves or others and stick to it, we build character. It gives us strength, control, and confidence. It helps us take more responsibility for our lives. The more we do this, the more we grow. The key is to focus on what we can control: our actions, our attitude, and our commitments. We are responsible for our own happiness and success. So, imagine this. You're sitting alone, quiet, no distractions. You take a deep breath and picture yourself at your own funeral. You see the room, the people, the flowers, the music. You walk up to the casket and look into it. There's you. All those people are there to remember you, to talk about the kind of person you were. They'll speak about your life, your choices, your character. What would you like them to say? What kind of friend, parent, worker, or partner would you want them to remember you as? This is what Habit 2 is about, beginning with the end in mind. It's about knowing what really matters to you, so you can make sure your actions today match that vision. You can't control everything in life, but you can control your choices. You can decide what kind of person you want to be. You can build a life that reflects your values, not just what others expect. This idea is called the two creations principle. Everything is made twice, first in your mind, then in reality. Like building a house, you imagine it first, then you build it. If you don't plan well, you'll end up with a house that's not what you wanted. The same is true for your life. If you don't think about what you want, you'll end up with something that doesn't fit your values. So, take time to think about what kind of life you want. What matters most to you? What kind of person do you want to be remembered as? Once you know that, you can make sure your daily choices match that vision. That's how you live with purpose and direction. So, let's talk about leadership and management. In business, things change fast. What worked before may not work now. Leaders have to watch what's happening around them, especially what customers want and need. If they don't, they'll fall behind. It's not enough to just manage things well. You have to lead. That means thinking about where you're going, not just what you're doing today. A big oil company president told me about how he realized he was stuck in management. He was busy with daily tasks and felt like he had no real direction. He decided to step back and focus on leading instead. It was hard at first. He missed the quick wins of managing, and people missed his constant support. But he kept going. And guess what? His company changed. They were better at what they did, and their profits went up a lot. This isn't just about business. Parents, too, often get stuck in the management mindset. They focus on rules and control instead of values and connection. But leadership is about purpose, direction, and real relationships. It's about being clear on what matters most and acting on that. Habit 2 is about being your own creator. It's about knowing what you truly value and living according to that. It's not about reacting to what's around you, but choosing how you want to live. You can change old habits and create new ones that match who you really are. To do this, you can write a personal mission statement. It's like a guide for your life. It tells you what you value, what you want to be, and how you want to live. It helps you stay focused on what really matters. So, here's the thing. A personal mission statement isn't just a list of goals. It's like a personal constitution, the thing that guides you through life's ups and downs. It's built on the right principles, the truths that matter most to you. When you have that, you don't get lost in the noise of daily life. You stay focused on what really counts. This idea comes from the Constitution of the United States, which has stood the test of time because it's based on strong, clear principles. A mission statement is like that for you. It helps you make decisions, big and small, with a clear sense of who you are and what you value. It gives you a sense of purpose, even when things change around you. To create this kind of mission statement, you start with your circle of influence. That's the part of your life where you can make a real difference. It's where you look at your values, your vision, and what really matters to you. From there, you build a personal constitution that guides your actions and choices. But not everyone has the same center. Some people are centered on their spouse, others on family, money, work, possessions, or even pleasure. These centers can lead to problems because they make you dependent on things that can change or fail. A mission statement helps you find a stronger, more stable center, one that gives you security, guidance, wisdom, and power. So, the key is to find your true center, the one that reflects your deepest values and purpose. That's where real leadership begins. So, the book talks about how people live their lives based on different centers. Some people center their lives around friends, others around enemies, or even around their church or themselves. These centers can be good or bad, but they all affect how people make decisions and live their lives. For example, if someone is friend-centered, they might let their friends' opinions or actions control how they feel or act. That can lead to problems because their self-worth depends on others, and they might not be happy or secure. The same goes for enemy-centered people. They might let their anger or bitterness about someone else take over their life, making them reactive instead of proactive. Then there are church-centered people who might focus too much on what the church says or how they act in church, but not enough on living out the real values of the church. And self-centered people might be selfish or focus too much on their own needs, which can lead to a lack of real security or purpose. The book says that the best center is one based on correct principles. These are deep, lasting truths that don't change. When you live by these principles, you have security, guidance, wisdom, and power. Principles don't depend on other people or things, they're always there. They help you make better choices, live more effectively, and feel more in control of your life. So, imagine this. You're at home, and your wife is excited for a concert. You've got the tickets, and you're looking forward to it too. But then your boss calls. He needs you to stay late for an important meeting. Now, how you decide to act depends on what your main focus is. If you're thinking about your wife, you might say no to the boss and take her to the concert, even if you're not happy about it. You're trying to please her, but you're also worried about what she might think. If you're focused on money, you might say you have to stay, thinking about the overtime or a possible raise. If you're work-centered, you might see this as a chance to show off your dedication. You might even feel proud of yourself for staying late. If you're thinking about what you can buy with the extra money, or how it would look to your coworkers, you're looking at the situation through a different lens. But if you're thinking about principles, you take a step back. You look at all the options, your family, your job, your values. You make a choice that feels right for you, not just for the moment. You don't let other people or things control you. You feel secure in your decision because it's based on what you truly believe in. And because of that, you can communicate clearly with your wife and your boss. You feel confident because you've made a choice that matters to you. So, sometimes life throws you a curveball. Maybe something big happens, like a loved one passes away, or you face a huge loss, or you hit rock bottom. These kinds of events can really shake you up. They pull you out of your usual way of thinking and make you take a step back. You start asking big questions. What really matters? Why am I doing what I'm doing? But here's the thing. You don't have to wait for something bad to happen to get clarity. You can make your own aha moments. You can choose to think differently. One way to do that is to imagine your own funeral. Write a eulogy. Be specific. Think about your wedding day, your kids growing up, your retirement. Imagine how you want to be remembered. You can also imagine your life in a few years. What kind of person do you want to be? What kind of legacy do you want to leave? These kinds of exercises help you see your life from a bigger picture. They bring your values into focus. You can also use affirmations. These are short, powerful statements that help you stay connected to your goals and values. They help you stay calm and focused. You can use them every day, like a little reminder of who you are and what you want to achieve. You can even use them in tough situations, like when you're facing a big challenge or a difficult conversation. And here's the key. When you use these tools, you're not just planning for the future. You're creating a life that feels right for you. You're building something real, something meaningful. You're not just surviving, you're living with purpose. So, the story keeps going. Covey talks about how having clear goals is super important. These goals aren't just things you want to do, they're part of who you are. They come from your values, your talents, and the roles you play in life. A good goal helps you see where you want to be and how to get there. It keeps you focused and gives your life purpose. And when you have goals that match your mission, you're in control of your life. You're not just going through the motions, you're making things happen. But Covey also says goals aren't just for individuals. Families and organizations need them too. A family mission statement helps everyone in the family understand what they stand for and what they want to achieve together. It's like a rule book for the family, guiding how they should act and live. When a family writes a mission statement, it helps them talk about what matters most and work together toward common goals. Organizations need mission statements too. They help everyone in the company know what the company stands for. When people are involved in creating the mission, it makes the statement stronger. It becomes part of the culture, and everyone starts to live by it. For example, at one hotel, every employee, from the housekeepers to the managers, helped write the mission statement. It became the heart of the hotel, guiding how they treated customers, how they worked together, and even how they paid their staff. So, Covey talks about how important it is for people to be involved in creating their own goals and the goals of the groups they're part of. He says that if people aren't involved, they won't really care about those goals. He gives an example of companies where the mission statements are written by a few people, but most of the workers don't even know what they are. That's a problem because when people don't believe in the goals, they don't follow them. Covey says that if you want real commitment, you need real involvement. He also reminds us that when people are young or new to a place, they might accept goals without question. But as they grow and start thinking for themselves, they need to be part of the process. That's why creating a mission statement takes time, patience, and care. It's not just about writing words on a paper, it's about making sure everyone feels part of it. When people really believe in the mission, they don't need someone else telling them what to do. They'll make their own decisions based on what they believe in. That's the power of a shared mission. It brings people together and makes them feel like they're part of something bigger. So, Covey talks about how important it is to manage your time in a way that matches your values and goals. He explains that most people are busy with things that are urgent but not important. These are the things that demand your attention right now, like calls, meetings, and emergencies. But they don't really help you grow or achieve what you really want in life. Covey gives a chart called the Time Management Matrix to show how people spend their time. It's divided into 4 quadrants. Quadrant I is urgent and important, like crises or problems that need fixing right away. Covey says people who focus too much on this quadrant get caught up in constant problems and stress. They're always reacting instead of planning. Quadrant 2 is not urgent but important, things like planning, building relationships, and taking care of yourself. Covey says this is where true effectiveness lives. He says if you focus more on Quadrant 2, you'll have more control over your life and be able to handle the urgent things without being overwhelmed. He also talks about how important it is to set goals and make a plan each day. He gives a table called Today's Priorities and Appointments Commitments as an example of how to organize your day. Covey reminds us that the key to success is not just doing what's urgent, but doing what's important. That's the real power of Habit 3. Covey talks about how people who are really effective don't just solve problems. They look for chances to improve things. They focus on what's important, not just what's urgent. He uses a quote from Peter Drucker to explain that. Drucker says effective people are opportunity-minded, not problem-minded. They don't let problems control them. Instead, they build things that create good results. Covey gives an example about shopping center managers. These managers were always busy with urgent tasks, meetings, reports, and problems. But they weren't spending time on important things like building relationships with store owners. That's a quadrant 2 activity. Covey explains how the managers started spending more time on relationships, and it made a big difference. The store owners became more successful, and the managers felt more fulfilled. He also talks about how to say no to things that aren't important so you can focus on what really matters. He gives an example of his wife, who was asked to join a committee. She didn't want to, but she said yes. Later, she wished she had said no politely. Covey says it's important to have a bigger yes inside you so you can say no to things that aren't serving your goals. Covey explains that saying no is hard, especially when things seem urgent. But if you focus on your values and mission, you'll be better at making decisions. He also talks about how different generations of time management have evolved. The best approach is to plan with purpose, not just to do things. It's about making choices that align with your goals and values. Covey talks about how people have tried to create tools to help them live a better, more effective life, but none have really worked well. The first tools were just simple lists to remember things. The second tools were calendars to keep track of appointments. The third generation had more features, like helping people plan and organize their time, but even these tools didn't really help people focus on what's truly important. Quadrant 2. Covey says that the best way to live a balanced, effective life is to start with a clear mission and focus on what matters, not just what's urgent. He explains that a good Quadrant 2 tool needs to be coherent, so it matches your goals and values. It should help you keep balance in life, not just focus on work. The tool should encourage you to spend time on important things, like relationships and personal growth. It should also be flexible, so it works for you, not the other way around. And it needs to be portable, so you can carry it with you wherever you go. Covey gives examples of how people might list their roles, like being a parent, a manager, or a community member. He shows how you can set goals for each role and schedule time to achieve them. He also talks about daily adapting, where you can review your schedule and adjust as needed, staying true to your values and mission. So, Covey talks about how some people don't like the third-generation tools because they make life too rigid. They lose the ability to be spontaneous and treat people like they're just part of a schedule. But the fourth-generation tools are different. They focus on what really matters: people, values, and purpose, not just time. These tools help you live by your principles and stay true to what you care about, even when things get in the way. The fourth-generation tools are better in 5 ways. First, they're based on principles, not just rules. Second, they help you make decisions based on your conscience and values. Third, they help you figure out your mission and long-term goals. Fourth, they help you balance your life by looking at all the roles you play, like parent, worker, friend, and making sure you spend time on what matters in each. Fifth, they give you a bigger picture by looking at the whole week, not just one day. This way, you stay connected to your values and purpose. Covey also talks about delegation. He says that the best way to be effective is to give responsibility to others. When you delegate, you free up your time for more important things. There are 2 kinds of delegation: gopher delegation and stewardship delegation. Gopher delegation is when you tell someone exactly what to do, step by step. That's like being a boss who tells you every move. But stewardship delegation is better. It gives people freedom to choose how to do things, as long as they meet the goal. It's about trust and responsibility. He gives an example of his son, Stephen. He gave him a job, taking care of the yard. He explained what green and clean meant, gave him some guidelines, and let him decide how to do it. He even helped him understand the expectations and consequences. But Stephen didn't do it right away. He didn't act. Covey was worried, but he knew that the real test was coming. So the story kept going. Covey was watching his son, Stephen, try to take care of the yard. He had given Stephen a job, explained what was needed, and let him decide how to do it. But Stephen didn't do it right away. Covey was worried, but he stayed calm. He didn't rush him. He waited. And then, one day, he saw the same mess as before. He was ready to shout at Stephen, to go back to telling him what to do. But he stopped himself. Instead, he smiled and asked how the yard was going. That was a mistake. Stephen felt like he wasn't being treated fairly. He stopped trying. Covey realized that trust was important, but it takes time. He decided to help Stephen. He picked up the trash Stephen had left. That was the moment Stephen decided to take responsibility. He started doing the job on his own. He even kept the yard better than before. He even made his brothers and sisters clean up after themselves. Covey learned that trust helps people grow. It makes them want to do their best. It's not about control. It's about giving people freedom and support. And when they take responsibility, amazing things happen. The real power of delegation is in trust, not in control. It's about working with people, not just telling them what to do. It's about building a relationship where both sides grow. And that's the start of real leadership. Stephen talked about how people can't just jump into good relationships. He said that before you can have strong friendships or teamwork, you have to first take care of yourself. You have to be responsible, honest, and in control of your own life. That's what he called private victory. He used a story about a man who was always being questioned by his wife about where he was and what he was doing. The man didn't like it, but he didn't realize that the problem wasn't the wife, it was his own behavior. He was acting like he didn't care, and that's why she was so worried. Stephen told him that you can't change other people. You have to change yourself first. He explained that trust is like a bank account. When you're kind, honest, and keep your promises, you're making deposits. But if you're rude, dishonest, or break your word, you're taking money out. If the account runs dry, it's hard to trust someone again. Relationships need constant care, like a garden. If you don't water them, they wither. Stephen used the example of a teenager who didn't trust his parents because they had always been bossy and never listened. The boy didn't feel safe to talk. But when the parents started showing real care, like listening and helping, the boy began to open up. So Stephen talked about how trust is like a bank account, and there are 6 main ways to add money to that account. The first one is really trying to understand someone else. It's important to know what makes another person feel valued, because what's important to one person might not be to another. For example, one friend didn't like baseball, but he did everything he could to support his son's interest. He spent weeks and money to take his son to see all the teams. His son felt loved and understood, and that made a big difference in their relationship. Another friend, a professor, had a bad time with his son because he didn't understand his son's needs. He tried to make deposits, but they felt like rejections. Then he realized he needed to understand his son better, so they worked together on a big project, and their relationship improved a lot. Stephen also talked about small, kind things. Like when a dad took his coat and put it around his sleeping son, even though the son didn't say anything. That small act made a big difference. And keeping promises is really important. When you make a promise, people start to trust you. If you break it, it's like taking money out of the trust account. So it's better to be careful with promises and explain if you can't keep them. Then he said that unclear expectations cause problems. If people don't know what's expected, trust gets hurt. It's better to talk about expectations from the start. And showing integrity, being honest and consistent, is the base of trust. If you're not honest with yourself, it's hard to be trustworthy with others. So, Stephen talked about how trust is built by being honest and fair with everyone, not just the people you like. He said, if you act differently with different people, it shows you don't have integrity. That makes people not trust you. He gave an example about two people talking behind someone else's back, saying bad things about their boss. That kind of behavior shows you're not trustworthy. If you do that, people will start to doubt you, even if you act nice in front of them. He also talked about how important it is to apologize when you hurt someone. You have to mean it, not just say it to make things look okay. If you don't apologize sincerely, it's like taking money out of a trust account. But if you do apologize honestly, it's like making a big deposit. He used a story about his son, David, who got hurt in the hallway, and the dad realized he had overreacted. He went to apologize, but David didn't forgive him right away because he felt the dad had been unfair before. That made the dad realize how important it is to be honest and fair all the time. Then he shared a story about a father who really wanted his son to go to a top school, but the son didn't want to. The father realized he was being too controlling and decided to show unconditional love instead. He told his son he would love him no matter what, and the son eventually decided to apply. The father showed love without conditions, and that helped the son feel safe and valued. So, there was this man named Hammarskjöld, and he said something really important about giving yourself completely to one person instead of trying to help a lot of people. The narrator was thinking about this while working in a place where he and his boss didn't agree on how things should be done. They both had different ideas, but neither wanted to talk about it. So they both stayed quiet and tried to do their best, but it wasn't working. They both felt unhappy, even if they didn't say it out loud. One day, the narrator read about Hammarskjöld's idea and realized he needed to fix the relationship. It was hard, but he decided to talk to his boss. He was nervous, thinking his boss might be angry or not listen. But when they met, the boss was just as nervous and wanted to fix things too. They both talked about their problems, and instead of fighting, they worked together to make things better. They started to trust each other more and became a strong team. This showed that problems aren't just bad, they can be chances to build trust and get closer. When people see problems as opportunities, they can make stronger relationships and work better together. So, there was this man named Hammarskjöld, and he said something really important about giving yourself completely to one person instead of trying to help a lot of people. The narrator was thinking about this while working in a place where he and his boss didn't agree on how things should be done. They both had different ideas, but neither wanted to talk about it. So, they both stayed quiet and tried to do their best, but it wasn't working. They both felt unhappy, even if they didn't say it out loud. One day, the narrator read about Hammarskjöld's idea and realized he needed to fix the relationship. It was hard, but he decided to talk to his boss. He was nervous, thinking his boss might be angry or not listen. But when they met, the boss was just as nervous and wanted to fix things too. They both talked about their problems, and instead of fighting, they worked together to make things better. They started to trust each other more and became a strong team. This showed that problems aren't just bad, they can be chances to build trust and get closer. When people see problems as opportunities, they can make stronger relationships and work better together. Now, the narrator talks about a company where the president was worried because his people weren't working together. He thought they were selfish and wanted a program to make them cooperate. But the narrator asked, "Is your problem the people or the way you're looking at things?" The president didn't know, so the narrator looked around and saw that the real issue was that the people were competing, not working together. He showed the president a chart with racehorses and a picture of Bermuda. He explained that the president was trying to get cooperation from a system that was built on competition. That's why it wasn't working. The narrator then talks about different ways people think about winning and losing. There's win-win, where everyone wins. There's win-lose, where one person wins and the other loses. There's lose-win, where one person gives in and the other takes advantage. Then there's lose-lose, where both people lose. And there's just win, where you focus only on getting what you want. The narrator says that win-win is the best way to work with others because it builds trust and makes people feel good about the outcome. There's also a diagram that shows the 5 dimensions of win-win and a chart that shows how courage and consideration balance each other. These tools help people understand how to build better relationships. The narrator explained that when people try to get what they want by pushing others around, it doesn't work long term. If you win at the expense of someone else, they might stop trusting you. They might feel resentful, and that can hurt the relationship. So, in the end, both sides lose. That's why win-win is the only real way to work with others in a fair and honest way. He told a story about a president of a big retail company who didn't believe in win-win. He thought the real world was all about win-lose. The narrator asked him, "What happens if you try to win by making others lose?" The president said he tried it with customers, but then he lost them. When he tried to give in to suppliers, he lost money. In the end, he realized that what he called win-win was really lose-win. Both sides ended up losing because they didn't work together to find a real solution. The narrator explained that if they had stayed in the conversation, listened more, and tried to find a solution that worked for both, they could have found something better, something that was good for both of them. That's called synergy. He also shared another story about a software company that walked away from a big contract to keep a win-win relationship. Even though it seemed risky, the company got a bigger deal later because the bank president was happy and wanted to work with them again. The narrator said that if you can't find a real win-win, then it's better to say no deal. No deal means you don't make a deal if it's not fair for both sides. It's better to walk away than to make a deal that hurts the relationship in the long run. So, the narrator went on to explain that to truly live the win-win way, you need more than just kindness or empathy. You need courage, too. You have to be brave enough to stand up for what you believe in, but also kind enough to listen and understand others. It's not easy to balance being strong and being considerate, but that's what real maturity is all about. If you're too strong without thinking about others, you might end up being selfish and bossy. If you're too considerate without courage, you might let others walk all over you. The key is to be both brave and thoughtful. That's how you build real trust and work well with others. Then the narrator talked about the idea of an abundance mentality. Most people think there's only so much in life, like there's only one pie, and if you take a big slice, there's less for everyone else. That's called the scarcity mentality. People with that mindset don't like to share credit or success, and they're often jealous of others' achievements. But if you believe in abundance, you see that there's enough for everyone. You can share, celebrate, and grow together. That's how you create real teamwork and win-win solutions. The narrator also said that if you want to live by win-win, you should look for people who already believe in it. Reading about leaders like Anwar Sadat or watching movies that show cooperation can help you understand what it really means. But the most important thing is to look inside yourself and see if you believe in win-win. Because if you do, you'll find that people are more willing to work with you and support you. So the narrator told a story about a company that wanted to change how they trained new employees. They wanted to create a win-win agreement, which means both the company and the trainees would benefit. They started by setting clear goals and rules. The trainees had to meet specific objectives, like learning about accounting, marketing, and real estate loans. They came up with over 100 goals, but then they simplified them to 39. The trainees were excited because they could get promoted to assistant managers and earn more money. The company was happy too because they would have well-trained managers. But not everyone was happy. Some top bosses didn't believe the trainees were ready. They said the trainees didn't have enough experience. The narrator and team realized the bosses were worried about the trainees not having seasoning or judgment. So they added more goals and tougher rules to make sure the trainees were ready. The trainees then worked hard, asking for help from experts in each department. They finished the program in just a few weeks instead of 6 months. The results were amazing. The narrator explained that win-win agreements are all about setting clear goals and consequences. People can manage themselves if they know what they need to do. The boss's role is to help and support, not to control. The narrator gave an example about a daughter and a family car. They made a win-win agreement about how the car would be used and how the daughter would take care of it. It worked well because everyone knew what was expected. So the narrator talked about how win-win doesn't just happen by accident. It needs systems that support it. Like training, planning, and communication, everything has to be built on the idea that everyone wins. Then the narrator shared a story about a company that had a big problem with their sales team. The president thought the issue was the people, but the narrator didn't agree. They went to the stores and saw what was really happening. The managers were taking all the best customers, leaving the salespeople with the hard jobs. The problem wasn't the salespeople, it was the way they were paid. So the narrator helped change the system. Now the managers only got paid when the salespeople did well. That made everyone work together and fixed the problem. Another example was a manager who was frustrated with how he evaluated his team. He gave someone a low score, even though they did well. The narrator realized it was because the manager was only being rewarded for numbers, not for how he treated people. They talked about setting up a new system where part of the reward was based on how well the manager treated others. That made the manager think about his behavior and change his approach. The narrator explained that the real problem is often in the system, not the people. If you have good people in a bad system, you'll get bad results. But if you build systems that encourage teamwork and mutual success, you can make a big difference in any group, whether at work, school, or home. The narrator talked about how people often rush to give advice without really understanding the problem first. They used a story about a doctor who gave a pair of glasses to a patient, but the glasses didn't help. The doctor didn't check if the glasses were right for the patient. The patient couldn't see anything and got frustrated. The doctor kept telling the patient to try harder, not realizing the glasses were wrong. The narrator said this is like how people often jump to solutions in communication without taking the time to understand the real issue. They gave another example with a mom and her child. The mom tried to get her child to talk about why they don't like school. But the child didn't want to share, and the mom kept pushing. The narrator said this shows how people often try to fix things without first really listening. The key, they said, is to seek first to understand, then to be understood. The narrator explained that communication is the most important skill in life. But most people don't get enough training in listening. They focus on speaking and writing, but not on listening deeply. They said that listening with real understanding, called empathic listening, is the foundation of good communication. They talked about how empathic listening is different from just reflecting back what someone says. It's about seeing the world from another person's point of view. It's about listening with your heart and eyes, not just your ears. This kind of listening helps build trust and makes people feel understood. The narrator shared a story about a man who used empathic listening during a business deal. He stopped trying to push his proposal and instead asked the other person to explain their concerns. By really listening, he made the other person feel heard, and they ended up agreeing to the deal. So, the narrator explained that to really influence others, you have to first understand them. That's why the first 3 habits are so important. They build a strong inner foundation. The key is to diagnose before you prescribe. That means you need to understand the situation before you try to fix it. This idea is true in many areas of life, like medicine, sales, law, and even product design. A doctor can't give a good prescription without a proper diagnosis. A salesperson can't sell a product unless they know what the customer really needs. A good lawyer doesn't start a case without understanding the facts and the law. And a good engineer knows the forces at work before designing a bridge. The narrator gave an example about their daughter, Jenny, who was sick when they couldn't go to a big football game. They called the doctor, but he didn't realize she was only 2 months old. He gave a prescription, but when they called back, he changed it because he now understood the full situation. That's why confidence in the diagnosis is so important. Without it, you can't trust the prescription. The narrator also talked about how people usually respond to others in one of 4 ways: evaluating, probing, advising, or interpreting. These are all autobiographical responses based on your own experience. But they don't help you really understand another person. They can make people feel judged or controlled. The narrator gave an example of a father and son talking about school. The father kept giving advice and asking questions, but the son felt unheard. He finally gave up talking because he didn't feel safe to share. To truly understand, you need to use empathic listening. That means using both your brain and your heart. You rephrase what someone says and reflect how they feel. This helps build trust and opens up a deep connection. So the father and son were having a big argument about school. The son was really upset, saying school wasn't helping him. He felt like he wasn't learning anything useful and that dropping out was better because his friend Joe was already working and making money. The father didn't know what to say at first. He kept trying to give advice, but the son wasn't listening. The son felt like his dad didn't understand him and that he was just giving advice instead of listening. That made him feel unsafe to talk. Then the father changed his approach. He stopped trying to give advice and started really listening. He asked the son how he felt and rephrased what the son said. The son started opening up more, sharing his fears and frustrations. The father realized the son wasn't just mad about school. He was worried about his future and feeling like he wasn't smart enough. The father listened with empathy and didn't push his own ideas. He let the son talk and feel heard. By the end, the son felt safe enough to ask for help. He was still worried, but he was ready to try something new. The father had made a big difference by truly understanding his son. He wasn't just trying to fix the problem, he was building trust and connection. That's what real understanding does. It opens the door for real change. The son was still struggling with school, but he wasn't giving up. He started asking his dad for help, even though he was scared. The dad didn't push back. He listened, really listened. The son shared how he felt stuck and worried about his future. The dad didn't try to fix everything right away. He just stayed calm and let the son talk. That made the son feel safe again. Then, the dad gave the son some advice, but not in a bossy way. He said, "If you can't change the situation, just live with it." The son said he couldn't live with it because it made him feel like he wasn't being honest with himself. The dad said, "Then work on your presentation. That's something you can control." But the son didn't want to do it. He thought it would take too much time and effort. Later, the dad met another person, a professor, who was having trouble getting money for his research. The professor said he wasn't getting support because his idea wasn't popular in the department. The dad told him to focus on understanding the people who were against him. He suggested the professor explain the other side better than they could. The professor tried, and it worked. He got the money he needed. The dad realized that when you really understand someone, you can help them. You don't just talk about your own ideas. You listen first, then share your own. That makes people trust you and want to listen to you. It's a powerful way to connect and solve problems. The dad kept thinking about how understanding people can change things. He remembered how the professor got support by really listening and trying to see things from others' points of view. He realized that when people are open and honest, they can create something amazing together. That's what synergy is, when two or more people work together and create something bigger than themselves. He started to think about how this could happen in everyday life. Maybe at home, at school, or at work. He imagined a classroom where students and teachers didn't just follow a plan, but created something new. He remembered a class he once taught where students started sharing their real thoughts and ideas. It wasn't about following a textbook or a schedule. It was about being open, honest, and trusting each other. That led to something powerful, a whole new way of learning and growing together. He thought about how people often get stuck in old ways of thinking. They're afraid to try new things because they don't know what will happen. But if you have inner security and trust in yourself, you can step into the unknown. You can create something new, something that wasn't there before. That's what synergy is. It's about opening your heart and mind to possibilities. He remembered the professor, the son, and even the insurance company meeting. All of them showed that when people are truly open and honest, they can create something amazing. It's not just about getting what you want, it's about creating something better for everyone. So, the man turned to his wife again and said, "Well, I don't know what I can do. I just don't know how to make you feel more important to me." His wife looked at him, tears forming in her eyes. "I just feel like I'm not important to you. I feel like I'm not a priority." He looked at her, and for the first time he didn't have a response. He didn't know how to say what he really felt. He didn't know how to show her that she mattered. He didn't know how to open his heart. But he started to realize that his left brain thinking had kept him from truly seeing her, from truly listening. He had been focused on what he could do, not on what he felt. He had been trying to solve the problem with logic, not with love. And in that moment, he saw how important it was to be open, to be vulnerable, to be truly present. That's when he started to understand that communication isn't just about talking, it's about feeling, about connecting, about creating something new together. That's what synergy is. It's not just about getting what you want, it's about creating something better for both of you. So, the man turned to his wife again and said, "Well, I don't know what I can do. I just don't know how to make you feel more important to me." His wife looked at him, tears forming in her eyes. "I just feel like I'm not important to you. I feel like I'm not a priority." He looked at her, and for the first time, he didn't have a response. He didn't know how to say what he really felt. He didn't know how to show her that she mattered. He didn't know how to open his heart. But he started to realize that his left brain thinking had kept him from truly seeing her, from truly listening. He had been focused on what he could do, not on what he felt. He had been trying to solve the problem with logic, not with love. And in that moment, he saw how important it was to be open, to be vulnerable, to be truly present. That's when he started to understand that communication isn't just about talking, it's about feeling, about connecting, about creating something new together. That's what synergy is. It's not just about getting what you want, it's about creating something better for both of you. "Honey," he said to her, "that's your problem. And that's the problem with your mother. In fact, it's the problem with every woman I know." Then he began to interrogate her as though it were some kind of legal deposition. "Do you live where you want to live?" "That's not it," she sighed. "That's not it at all." "I know," he replied with a forced patience. "But since you won't tell me exactly what it is, I figure the best way to find out what it is to find out what it is not. Do you live where you want to live? I guess. Honey, Steven's here for just a few minutes to try to help us. Just give a quick yes or no answer. Do you live where you want to live? Yes. Okay. That's settled. Do you have the things you want to have? Yes. All right. Do you do the things you want to do? This went on for a little while, and I could see I wasn't helping at all. So I intervened and said, "Is this kind of how it goes in your relationship?" "Every day, Stephen," he replied. "It's the story of our marriage," she sighed. I looked at the two of them, and the thought crossed my mind that they were two half-brained people living together. "Do you have any children?" I asked. "Yes, two." "Really?" I asked incredulously. "How did you do it?" "What do you mean, how did we do it?" "You were synergistic," I said. 1 plus 1 usually equals 2. But you made 1 plus 1 equal 4. Now that's synergy. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So how did you do it? "You know how we did it," he replied. "You must have valued the differences," I exclaimed. Valuing the differences is the essence of synergy, the mental, the emotional, the psychological differences between people. And the key to valuing those differences is to realize that all people see the world, not as it is, but as they are. If I think I see the world as it is, why would I want to value the differences? Why would I even want to bother with someone who's off track? My paradigm is that I am objective. I see the world as it is. Everyone else is buried by the minutiae, but I see. So the developer was really stuck. He didn't want to fight, but he had to. He agreed to try some new ideas, habits 4, 5, and 6. He set up a meeting with the bank people, even though they didn't want to talk. The room was tense. The bank's lawyer told them to just listen, not say anything. But the developer wanted to fix things. He started explaining how people can work together to win-win. He wrote down the bank's worries on the board. At first, the bank didn't say much, but as he kept listening and trying to understand, they started opening up. They shared more, even about their own problems. The developer wrote down his side too. They began to see each other better. They realized how bad things had gotten because of poor communication. They started thinking of new ideas that could help everyone. By the end of the day, they had a plan. They left together, ready to talk to others. Even though more problems came later, the fight was stopped. The building went on. The developer learned that sometimes you need to fight, but not with anger. You fight with understanding. You fight with creativity. You fight with teamwork. You fight with synergy. You fight with respect. You fight with hope. The developer had a new idea. He didn't just want to fix the problem, he wanted to grow. He started thinking about himself. He realized he was tired, and he wasn't taking care of his body or his mind. He hadn't been sleeping well, and he wasn't thinking clearly. He started to feel like he was running on empty. He knew he needed to change. He began to take small steps. He started exercising, even if it was just a short walk. He started reading more, and he made time to think about what really mattered. He talked to friends and family, and he tried to be more patient with himself. He didn't do it all at once, but he kept going. He started to feel better, both inside and out. He realized that to be effective, he had to take care of himself first. He wasn't just trying to solve other people's problems, he was trying to solve his own. He was learning that real change starts with you. The developer kept thinking about how he needed to take care of himself, not just in small ways, but in all areas of his life. He realized that to be truly effective, he had to look at 4 parts of himself: his body, his mind, his feelings, and his spirit. These 4 parts are like the 4 wheels of a car. Each one needs to be strong and balanced for the whole to work well. He started by taking care of his body. He began to exercise, even if it was just a short walk. He made sure to eat well, get enough rest, and not push himself too hard. He learned that exercise isn't just about working hard, it's about working smart. He found that even a little bit of movement could make a big difference. He also learned that pushing too fast could hurt more than help. He started slowly and listened to his body. Then he thought about his mind. He began to read more, think more deeply, and learn new things. He realized that his thoughts shaped his actions and that he had to be careful about what he let into his mind. He started to take time to reflect and plan, instead of just reacting to what was happening around him. He also worked on his feelings. He started to talk more openly with friends and family, and he tried to be kinder to himself. He realized that being patient with himself was just as important as being patient with others. He started to notice how his emotions affected his decisions and his relationships. Finally, he looked at his spirit. He thought about what really mattered to him, what values he wanted to live by, and what gave his life meaning. He started to spend time in nature, read books that inspired him, and pray or meditate to feel connected to something bigger than himself. As this table shows, all 4 parts of himself needed to be taken care of. He couldn't just focus on one. He had to balance them all, just like he balanced his time between work and rest, between action and reflection. He kept working on himself, always looking for ways to grow. One day, he saw a message about spiritual renewal. It said, "like sand." And then he knelt down and wrote a few words with a broken shell before walking away. He didn't look back because he knew the tide would come in. Spiritual renewal takes time, but it's something we can't afford to ignore. It's a quadrant 2 activity, and we can't neglect it. Martin Luther once said, "I have so much to do today. I'll need to spend another hour on my knees." For him, prayer wasn't just a duty, it was a source of power. A Zen master once said, "I never leave my place of meditation." He meditated every morning and carried that peace with him all day. That's how spiritual renewal works. It spreads like an umbrella over everything else. It renews and refreshes us, especially when we recommit to it. A personal mission statement is important because it helps us stay connected to our values and purpose. We can visualize and live out the events of the day in harmony with those values. He also thought about how important it was to keep his mind sharp. He realized that once school was over, many people let their minds atrophy. They stopped reading, stopped thinking deeply, and spent too much time watching TV. TV is a powerful influence, and it can shape our values in subtle ways. He started limiting TV time in his family and encouraged them to think about what they were watching. Reading and writing were also important for mental renewal. He started reading a book a month and writing in a journal to help him think more clearly. Organizing and planning were also part of mental renewal, helping him stay focused on his goals. So, the story goes on. The book talks about how we should be people who are principled, value-driven, and independent. When we have an abundance mentality, we believe that helping others doesn't take away from us, it actually makes us stronger. Because when we believe in someone else, they're more likely to believe in themselves. That's why it's so important to be a positive influence in other people's lives. Imagine someone who doesn't believe in themselves. Then imagine someone who believes in them. That belief can change their whole life. The book uses a story about a knight and a woman named Dulcinea to show how believing in someone can change their life. The knight sees something special in her, even when others don't. He keeps encouraging her, and slowly, she starts to believe in herself too. That's the power of affirmation and support. Another story shows how what we think about people can actually shape their behavior. In one case, a computer labeled some kids as dumb and others as bright, and it changed how teachers treated them. The kids labeled as dumb ended up doing better because they were treated with more hope and belief. That's a self-fulfilling prophecy. What we expect can become reality. The book also talks about balance. To be truly effective, we need to renew all four parts of ourselves: physical, spiritual, mental, and social-emotional. If we ignore one part, it affects the others. Just like in an organization, if they only focus on making money, they lose their sense of purpose and teamwork. But if they balance all four areas, they can grow and succeed. Renewal is not just about taking care of yourself, it's about creating a positive impact on others. And when we renew, we move on an upward spiral of growth. We keep learning, committing, and doing, always striving to be better. So, here's a story about a man named Ezra Taft Benson who had a big idea that changed how he looked at life. He and his wife, Sandra, went to live in Hawaii for a year to write a book and take a break from their busy lives. They wanted to live simply and focus on their family. Every day, they would ride a little bike through the cane fields, talk, and then have lunch on a quiet beach. They talked about everything: kids, work, ideas, and even their own feelings. One day, while looking through a library book, Ezra found a paragraph that stuck with him. It said there's a space between when something happens and how we respond to it. That space is where we can choose how we act, and that choice can change everything. Ezra thought about this a lot and realized it was like an inside revolution. He started to see his own behavior differently and began to take control of his reactions. He and Sandra started talking more deeply, really getting to know each other. They shared their fears, their pasts, and their feelings. At first, it was hard. They had some old problems, like one of them had a strong feeling about a brand of appliances. It seemed silly, but it brought up bigger feelings about family and loyalty. They talked about it with care and respect, and it helped them understand each other better. Over time, their talks became more meaningful. They learned to listen and support each other. They realized that real connection comes from being honest and open. They made a promise to keep talking, even when life got busy. They found that by being true to themselves and each other, they could grow and stay close. Ezra and Sandra kept talking, not just about their problems, but about the bigger picture of life, family, and the kind of people they wanted to be. They started to think about how the choices they made today would affect their kids, their grandkids, and even people they'd never meet. They realized that the way they acted, the way they treated each other, and the way they handled their own emotions were shaping the world around them. It wasn't just about fixing their own problems, it was about creating a better future for everyone. They thought about how their parents had influenced them, both good and bad, and wondered if they could break the cycle. Could they choose to be different? Could they teach their kids to be kind, to think deeply, and to live with purpose? They started to see their family not just as a group of people living together, but as a team working toward a common goal. They made a promise to be intentional with their time, to listen more, and to guide their children with love and wisdom. They also thought about other people in their lives: friends, neighbors, even strangers. They realized that everyone had their own stories, their own struggles, and their own ways of growing. If they could change themselves, maybe they could help others change too. It was a big idea, but it felt right. It felt like the kind of change that could really make a difference. They asked Stephen Covey, the author of The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, what he would change about his book. He said he wouldn't change anything. He'd go deeper and apply the ideas more widely, which he did in other books that came after The 7 Habits. He talked about how people often neglect Habit 3, put first things first, and how that led to writing a whole book on it. He also shared how the 7 habits can be applied to families, teens, and even whole organizations. His son, Sean, used the framework to write a book for teenagers, which was both fun and meaningful for young readers. Covey explained that the 7 habits are based on universal principles found in all major world religions. Though the practices might look different in different cultures, the core ideas are the same. He also talked about how the habits are connected, like a hologram, each one contains the whole. Starting with one habit can help teach all the others. He shared that the hardest habit for him to live is habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. When he's tired or sure he's right, he struggles to really listen. He sees the 7 habits as a journey, not a destination. They're simple to understand, but hard to live consistently. He also talked about Franklin Covey, the company he runs, and how they try to live the 7 habits every day, even though they're not perfect. He explained why there are 7 habits, not 6 or 8. The number 7 comes from the way the habits are structured: 3 private victory habits and 3 public victory habits, with 1 to renew and maintain them all. He ended with a new book, The 8th Habit, which talks about moving from effectiveness to greatness. He said the world has changed a lot since the 7 Habits was first published, and people now need to think bigger, act bigger, and contribute more meaningfully. Covey talked about how fame affects him. It feels good to be recognized, but he doesn't want people to think he made up the 7 habits. He says the ideas are already in people's hearts, and he's just helping them live by them. He's not a guru, and he doesn't want followers. He wants people to follow principles that are true and right. He also shared what he would do differently in business and as a parent. In business, he'd spend more time choosing the right people for important jobs. He'd look deeply at their character and skills, not just pick someone because they seem to have the answer. In parenting, he wishes he'd built stronger, win-win relationships with his kids instead of letting them win by default. He talked about how technology will change the future. He believes that as technology grows, the human part becomes even more important. You can't have high tech without high touch. People need to care about how technology is used. Covey also answered questions about teaching the 7 habits to kids and how to share the book with others. He said the best way is to live by the habits, build trust, and let people see how they help in your life. Covey gave an example of a day at the office for a marketing director. He listed all the things the director had to do, like meeting with the general manager, preparing a media budget, and handling urgent emails. Most of these tasks were in quadrant I, important and urgent. But Covey said that if you only focus on quadrant I, you're always reacting instead of planning. He wanted to show how a quadrant 2 approach, focusing on important but not urgent tasks, can change how you manage your day. He explained that a quadrant 2 manager would plan ahead, like preparing for a board meeting by setting an agenda and making sure everyone is ready. They'd also take time to build strong relationships, like having lunch with the general manager to talk about long-term goals. Covey said that by focusing on prevention and planning, you can avoid many problems before they happen. He also talked about how to handle the in-basket and emails. Instead of doing it all yourself, you could train your secretary to take care of most of it, so you can focus on bigger, more important things. And for the sales manager, Covey suggested looking at the bigger picture of the relationship instead of just solving a problem quickly. So, the marketing director started thinking about how to handle the sales meeting next month. Instead of doing everything himself, he decided to bring together a small team of people who report to him. He asked them to study what the sales team really needed and come up with a plan. He gave them a deadline and told them to bring their ideas to him. This way, he could focus on bigger things while his team worked on the details. He also thought about product X that didn't pass quality control. He didn't just fix the problem right away. He asked his team to look into it more deeply. He wanted to find out if there was a bigger issue and make sure it didn't happen again. He realized that by planning ahead and letting others take responsibility, he could avoid a lot of stress. He started training his team to think long-term and work together better. He knew it wasn't easy, and he wasn't doing everything himself yet. But he was making progress. He believed that if he kept working on this, things would get better over time. So, years after the book came out, Stephen R. Covey was still teaching the same ideas all over the world. He talked to leaders, teachers, and everyday people, sharing the same message about living by principles. He said the world had changed a lot. Technology moved fast, and life felt more connected and busy than ever. But even with all that change, some things stayed the same. He believed in timeless truths like honesty, fairness, and respect. He said these principles were like gravity, always there, always true. He also talked about how people today often wanted quick wins without putting in the work. They wanted success without the effort, and that didn't work. Covey said the 7 habits were more important than ever because they helped people find their real selves and live with purpose. He believed that when people followed these habits, they could take control of their lives and make real changes. He admitted it wasn't easy to live by the 7 habits every day. But he stayed hopeful, saying that if people truly wanted to grow, they could do it. He also shared that some habits were harder than others, like being a good listener. He encouraged people to start with one habit and keep working on it, little by little. He dreamed of a world where everyone lived by these principles, where people worked together, respected each other, and used their unique gifts to help others. He believed that change started with individuals, and when enough people chose to live with integrity, the world would follow. He talked about how when companies started teaching the 7 habits, things really changed. People began taking more responsibility, and accidents went down. Spouses were surprised, asking, "What have you done with my husband or wife?" They're completely changed. Whole families started learning the habits too. Covey said it wasn't just about having great people, it was about the whole company living by these principles. They had to take initiative, have clear goals, stick to what's important, work with everyone in a win-win way, and keep coming up with new ideas. He said that building a culture around the 7 habits wasn't just the CEO's job, it was everyone's. In that kind of place, everyone could be a leader. He dreamed of a world where leadership wasn't just about titles, but about doing the right thing, even when it was hard. He mentioned leaders like Gandhi and Mandela, who had moral authority because they stood for something bigger than themselves. Covey said he was always a teacher, not just a professor. He believed that if you truly followed the 7 habits, you became a leader. He encouraged people to think about the legacy they would leave. For him, his greatest legacy was his family. He said nothing made him happier than seeing his family happy and living good lives. He also talked about how important it is to balance work and home. People often spent a lot of time planning for work, but not enough time on their families. He said that success in one area could help the other, and it was never too late to start working on your family. He believed in teaching children the 7 habits too, because he saw how it could change their lives. He was proud of the schools that had started teaching the 7 habits to kids, helping them grow into strong, responsible leaders. So, what are the key lessons from this book? First, be proactive. Life isn't about waiting for things to happen to you, it's about choosing how you respond. You can't control everything, but you can control your attitude and your actions. That means taking responsibility for your life and making choices that align with your values. Another key lesson is to start with the end in mind. Think about who you want to be and what kind of person you want to be remembered as. Imagine your own funeral and ask yourself, what would you want people to say about you? That vision will guide your daily decisions and help you stay focused on what truly matters. Also, focus on what you can influence. There's a circle of concern and a circle of influence. Worry about the things you can't change, but spend your energy on the things you can. That means working on yourself, your relationships, and your character. Be genuine. Success isn't about looking perfect or acting like you have everything figured out. It's about being real, kind, and true to who you are. People don't need to be fixed, they need to be understood. And finally, grow from within. Change starts inside you. No one else can make you change. You have to open your own door. When you do, you'll grow in ways you never thought possible. That's the heart of being effective, not just in life, but in who you become.